Sega ビデオゲーム SG1000 Sega!
First of all, hopefully she got paid really well for that. Second, if you could translate this and put it in the comments, I will pin your comment at the top. Hello everyone, it's Kevin, and today we're looking at a console that I honestly knew nothing about. As someone who grew up with the NES, Sega didn't really exist to me until the Genesis. Eventually I knew that the Master System was a thing, but I never saw one in person growing up. And the SG-1000? I don't think I've even heard of that name until a couple years ago. And there's a reason for that. And that is because it was pretty much Japan exclusive. So when I finished looking at the Atari 2600, Intellivision and ColecoVision, a lot of you started to tell me to check out Sega's first console. I'll admit, I wasn't expecting much. I figured it'd be another early 80s system with a handful of decent arcade ports and a bunch of games that hadn't aged all that well. Instead, I found a few games that genuinely surprised me. So today, we're looking at 10 games that I'm trying for the first time on a system that I've never played before. But first, a little history. The SG-1000 launched in Japan in July of 1983, and if that date sounds familiar, there's a reason for that. Nintendo also launched the Famicom, the Japanese version of the NES, on the exact same day. Imagine trying to compete with what would eventually become one of the biggest consoles of all time right out the gate. Yeah, that's rough. Now here's something I didn't know about before I started researching for this video. Remember my ColecoVision video? Well, the SG-1000 is actually closely related to that system. The hardware inside the two systems is very similar. They use the same video display processor and a very similar CPU, which is why some games ended up appearing on both systems and why they often look similar and have a very similar feel as well. So if you watch that video, you're probably going to notice some familiar looking graphics. The biggest difference though is that Sega went with their own type of controller, and they kept on building on this hardware. The SG-1000 eventually became the SG-1002, and then evolved into the Mark III, which most of us know outside of Japan as the Sega Master System. So in a way, this little console is where Sega's home console journey really began. Alright, enough history. I do have a little disclaimer before I start. Since this system is Japanese, and I'm pretty much going into these blind, so what this means is that you're going to see some very terrible gameplay at points. Oh well. Let's power on and see what this thing can actually do. We'll start with Monaco GP. Right away you can tell that Sega's arcade roots are showing here. The gameplay is simple. Dodge traffic, avoid crashes, and try to survive as long as possible. It's not going to replace something like Rad Racer years later, but for a game released in 1983, it's surprisingly smooth. It's similar to Bump and Jump, minus knocking people out. As you could see in this gameplay, the tunnels were the most difficult part of the game for me, as I just couldn't see what was ahead. I also couldn't figure out how to handle driving through water more efficiently. But despite all that, I had a great time. I found myself saying just one more run a few times, and that's usually a good sign. Well, this is a good start. This one has a title screen and a demo so I could actually figure out what to do. Bombjack is one of those arcade games that's immediately fun. You collect bombs, avoid enemies, and clear the stage. Simple. Sometimes these older games still work because they don't overcomplicate things, and Bombjack is one of those. This results in a super addictive game. The hit detection is kinda strange as it favors the player in this case. I say this because there are many gaps above or beside enemies that I didn't think I could clear, but I risked it and I did clear it. This game also has music, which is fine, but the sound effects are kind of grating after a while. The controls are responsive, and after a couple of minutes I completely forgot I was playing one of Sega's earliest home consoles. This game is very interesting. The first thing you'll notice is that it has a title screen and is paired with an awesome title theme. Listen to this. There's also a level creator, which is wild for the time of release. Once you get into the game, it looks pretty basic. Then you realize you have to plan routes and trap enemies and try not to trap yourself at the same time. It's one of those games where every level teaches you something new. It's definitely not the flashiest game on the list, but it's one that I kept coming back to, just to see if I could crack the code and get any farther. Now this one caught my attention because I actually played H.E.R.O on the Atari 2600 for one of my previous videos, and I ended up really liking it. So naturally, I was curious to see how the SG-1000 version compared. Right away, it felt smoother. The movement is a little more fluid, the visuals are clearer, and everything just seems a little bit more polished without changing what made the game fun in the first place. It is the smoothest console version that I've played yet. The music is pretty good as well. The gameplay hasn't really changed though. You're still flying around with your backpack, rescuing trapped miners, avoiding enemies, and trying not to crash into everything. It's still a great game. I just found myself enjoying this version a little more. It kept everything I liked about the Atari release, but adds that extra layer of polish that made me want to keep on playing. The only issue I had with this one was that the bomb hit detection was bogus at times. I mean, look at that. It hit me from so far away. Oh well. If you've only ever played the 2600 version, this one is definitely worth checking out. I could definitely say that Seeso is not a game that I've ever heard of before. It is basically an action game where you're constantly moving, shooting, and trying not to get overwhelmed. It also has a level editor. I'm just not sure what to do though. I get that I need to gather the flowers, but what do I do after that? The CPU dies in the demo before I can even see what to do. So that's just great. I'm not sure about this one. It doesn't seem like it's anything revolutionary. The controls feel good, I guess, but I'll likely never play this one again. Now here's one I definitely recognize. It's Wonder Boy. After playing Wonder Boy 3 on the Master System recently, it was really cool to go back and see where the series started. Obviously, it's much simpler than the later entries, but the charm is already there. It is super impressive to see it running on this console. I mean, already it has bright visuals, good music, and solid platforming. My only complaint is that it's pretty tough compared to the Master System and NES versions. However, it is pretty cool that you can already see the foundation they would build on for the NES and Master System version. Another game where we collect flowers, huh? Girl's Garden has a pretty cool piece of history attached to it though. It was one of the earliest games worked on by Yuji Naka. You know, the guy who would later help create Sonic the Hedgehog. That's pretty neat. It is a weird game though. You're armed with jars of honey, but just like Seeso, I'm not sure what to do, and the demo didn't really help. The game itself seems charming and colorful though, and at least it has music. But it's likely another game on this list that I won't come back to. If there's one genre Sega seemed to understand early on, it's shooters. Gull Cave is fast, looks good, and keeps throwing enemies at you. I think this one is really cool. It reminds me of some of the shooters on the NES. It has high difficulty, power-ups, music, and good sound effects. It also plays very smoothly. It's exactly the kind of game that's easy to lose 20 minutes playing without realizing it. Which is pretty much what happened to me. Alright, that title screen is legit. This might be the game that surprised me the most. At first glance, it doesn't look like much, but once you start figuring out the puzzles and exploring, there's way more depth than I expected. This one is also rather addictive for an early puzzle platformer. It feels like one of those hidden gems that people don't talk enough about. I could definitely play this again, and I do have to mention that this boy has hops. This game is at the top of the list because if someone asked me for a game that could show what the system is capable of, this would probably be my recommendation. Ninja Princess is really original and innovative for the time. I guess you could call it a shooter? Maybe? I mean, it's quick, the controls feel good, the action starts almost immediately. I will say that it is super tough though, and you're gonna die a lot, and you're gonna have to start over. A lot. But it still manages to be fun over 40 years later despite that. For our first experience with the SG-1000, this might be my favorite of the bunch. So, what did I think? Honestly, the SG-1000 ended up being a lot better than I expected. Is it better than the Master System or NES? No, not even close. But that's kind of an unfair comparison, because the NES and the Master System were competitors. The SG-1000 was the predecessor, and you could actually see Sega figuring things out with this one. You could see ideas that would eventually lead to the Master System and years later, the Genesis. As someone who completely missed this console growing up in North America, I'm glad that I finally gave it a chance. Now I'm curious, did any of you actually own or play an SG-1000? Or are you like me and only discovering it decades later? Let me know down in the comments, and if there are any hidden gems I missed, I'd love to hear about them. After this one I'm going to be playing some more Master System, but that's a wrap. It is time to reboot. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the other side.